The wind off the tarmac was sharp, but not as sharp as the silence in my bones. 8 months in Kandahar had taught me how to live with heat, dust, and the sound of things you never want to hear again. But nothing prepared me for the weight of quiet that followed me home. I texted Claire from the transport hangar 2 hours earlier. No reply. Odd, but not shocking. She'd always hated the unpredictability of deployment schedules, and I figured she wanted to keep our son's routine stable. Still, when I pulled into our driveway and saw someone else's shoes on the porch, men's, not mine, something twisted in my gut. The door was unlocked. I stepped into the living room, duffel still in hand, and there he was. Ethan. My boy. 9 years old now, taller than I remembered. Same curious eyes. Same stubborn cowlick on the side of his head. But it wasn't the sight of him that stopped me cold, it was the voice. He was speaking fluent Russian. Not the kind you pick up from cartoons or YouTube videos. Not random words like babushka or vodka. No, this was fluent, rapid-fire Russian, spoken into a phone I didn't recognize, his tone calm, like he'd done this 100 times. He looked up. Eyes widened. The phone slipped from his hand and landed face down on the rug. "Dad," he said, switching to English. The Russian vanished as if it had never existed. I dropped my duffel. Claire appeared from the hallway, a forced smile plastered across her face like cheap paint. "You're early," she said, hugging me too tightly. Surprise. I didn't hug her back. "I just heard our son speaking a language I don't know," I said. "Want to explain that?" She laughed, tight and unnatural. "Kids learn quick. Some of the kids at his new daycare speak Russian. He picks things up." "Full sentences?" I asked. "At that speed?" She blinked. "You're being paranoid. You just got back." I walked past her, scooped up the phone from the rug. No passcode. One contact. Ivan. No last name. No image. Just a number and a name. I froze. That name belonged to a man I hadn't thought of in 5 years. A man who should have been dead. I hadn't seen that name, Ivan, since Ukraine. 2019. Back when I was running black logistics and ghosting arms caches we didn't want on the books. Ivan Sokolov was GRU adjacent, the kind of man whose face didn't exist in any official file but whose fingerprints were all over half the failed coups in the region. He disappeared after a raid gone sideways in Kharkiv. We'd assumed he was dead. Burned. Asset erased. Now his name was in my son's phone. I didn't say anything to Claire that night. Just played the part of the dazed soldier coming home. Ate the lasagna she microwaved. Smiled when Ethan showed me his welcome home drawing. Pretended not to notice how she flinched when I brushed her shoulder. I told Ethan I was proud of him and kissed his forehead. But inside, my mind was running at combat speed. The next morning, I paid a visit to the daycare. Not the polished front office Claire insisted was so reputable in her emails. The real one, the drop zone, where kids got handed off in a rush of coffee breath and SUV exhaust. "Mr. Harlan?" said Ms. Desai, the director. Her voice was brittle with surprise. "We weren't expecting you." "Thought I'd see where my son spends his afternoons," I said casually. She hesitated, then gave me a stiff smile. "Let me show you around." We walked the halls. The place was fine. Bright colors. Clean floors. Kids napping on cots. But something about the staff, the way they watched me, made my skin crawl. "I have to ask," I said, pausing near a wall of cubbies. "You've seen me before, right? Picking Ethan up." Miss Desai looked confused. "No, sir. Actually, 3 men have picked him up in the past 8 months. None of them were you." Her words landed like a sniper round. I kept my voice level. "Do you have video?" She flinched. "Not of pickups. Only the classrooms. Names? License plates. I'm not supposed to share that. I held up my military ID. You are now. That got me a printout. 3 names. All false. IDs fabricated. Phone numbers now disconnected. But one of the vehicles had been seen repeatedly, a black Mercedes SUV with diplomatic plates. Russian consulate. Back home, I searched Ethan's backpack. Tucked in the lining was a second phone. This one encrypted. One app. A basic Russian children's game. But when I tapped the right corner of the splash screen 3 times, a password prompt appeared. It wasn't a game. I cracked it in under 5 minutes. Military-grade backdoor. Location pings, audio logs, a secure chat client disguised as a puzzle app. And one message stood out, unread. "Proceed to phase 2. The boy is ready." That's when I realized this wasn't just betrayal. This was an operation. And my wife, Claire, wasn't collateral. She was part of it. Claire had always been good at hiding things, She hid her past behind a marketing degree from a second-tier university and a laugh that made men underestimate her. She hid her intentions beneath school drop-offs and book club emails and carefully curated Instagram posts. But now, all I could see were the cracks in the mask she'd worn for over a decade. I didn't confront her, not yet. I needed answers, not denials. And I needed to know one thing above all. Why my son? Back in the garage, I sifted through the plastic storage bins Claire had labeled tax stuff and holiday decorations. One was different, heavier, taped shut with layers of gaffer tape. I slid it open with my combat knife. Inside, burner phones, an envelope thick with euros and rubles, a Russian passport, Claire's photo, a different name, Irina Ananova, dual citizenship, and a flash drive. I locked the garage door and slid the drive into my laptop. Encrypted files. But the directory names told their own story. Phase I, linguistic priming, target integration, Harlan Jr. Override protocols, asset fusion. I felt my heart seize. They hadn't just been teaching Ethan Russian. They'd been programming him. Using my deployment as cover, Claire and whoever she worked with had embedded psychological routines into my son's daily life. Conditioning. Trust transfer exercises. Foreign language immersion disguised as advanced learning. A child's mind is a sponge, especially at 9. I thought about the phone, the messages, the way Ethan had looked at me with recognition but not relief. What if I hadn't come home early? What if I come home too late? That night, I told Claire I was taking Ethan camping for the weekend, just the two of us, to reconnect. She smiled a little too easily. Of course, she said. You two need that. We left at dawn. But we didn't go to the woods. We went to Samir. An old friend from my Black Ops days. Samir ran a security firm out of a warehouse that technically didn't exist on any city planning map. Ex-Mossad. No patience for diplomacy. But when he opened the door and saw me holding my son's hand, something in his weathered face softened. I need full spectrum analysis, I told him. Behavioral, linguistic, neural if you can. I think they've been rewiring my son. Samir didn't flinch. What about the wife? She's not my wife anymore. She's a handler. He nodded once. Come in. Ethan was quiet the whole time. Cooperative. Even when Samir hooked him up to low-frequency EEG nodes and ran language pattern recognition software. We played it off as a super cool brain game. Ethan didn't smile. He never smiled anymore. 3 hours later, Samir turned to me, face grim. They've embedded command cues, he said. Buried them deep. Russian, mostly. A few in English. The kid doesn't even know they're there. Can you pull them out? He hesitated. Yes, but not without consequences. You sure you want to do this? I looked through the glass at my son, sitting alone in the observation room, tracing Cyrillic letters into the condensation on the window. They already made the choice for me. Samir's lab became our bunker. For 72 hours, he and his team unraveled Ethan's mind like a field manual, page by page, code by code. They worked in silence mostly, save for the low hum of machines and the occasional curse in Hebrew when they uncovered something particularly vile. By day 2, we had the full profile. Triggers. Responses. Language loops. They'd embedded linguistic triggers keyed to specific Russian phrases. Some simple, like commands to obey or follow. Others more complex, multi-step behavioral chains activated by voice tone, body language, or environmental cues. One sequence was designed to make Ethan leave the house at 2 a.m. if the phrase "clear skies above the wolves" was spoken. Ethan didn't even remember hearing that phrase. But his neural response? Immediate. They'd made my son a walking asset. A ghost sleeper. Claire had called me 12 times by then. I didn't answer. She didn't call the police. That told me everything. She didn't report Ethan missing because he wasn't missing. He was off schedule. I went to Samir that night with a simple question. Can we turn the table on them? He understood. You want to wire the boy? No. I want to wire them. We didn't have access to Claire's phone, but we didn't need it. The burner I found in Ethan's backpack had been transmitting passively the entire time, bouncing through an encrypted server node in Kaliningrad. But when I handed it to Samir's hacker, an ex-GCHQ prodigy named Will, they traced the server's outbound packet structure and found a secondary communication channel. One phrase came up again and again in the metadata. Phase 2. Transfer. Samir translated the subcode. They're planning an extraction. Someone's coming. Within the week. I stared at the screen. Where? Will scrolled. They're using a local shell company, Primex Logistics. Warehouse 17. Port of Tacoma. Same building Claire said she leased for her design business. Of course. Port Authority records showed a shipment scheduled to arrive from Murmansk. Manifest, Automotive Tools. Cinder, Gromtech Holdings. I knew that name. Jerry Front. I clenched my jaw. That's not a pickup. Samir raised an eyebrow. It's a handoff. They're not taking Ethan out. They're bringing someone in. Now I knew what Phase 2 meant. It wasn't just about Ethan obeying orders. It was about him trusting someone else more than me. They were trying to erase me from his mind, not kill me, not vanish me. Worse, replace me. And Claire, she wasn't just a handler. She was the gatekeeper. I returned home 3 days later. Alone. No Ethan. No confrontation. Just a plan. The house was spotless. Scented candles. A casserole on the stove. Claire played the dutiful wife again, as if the last 8 months and everything I'd discovered were just shadows in my mind. You didn't answer my calls, she said, wiping her hands on a dish towel, trying not to sound angry. Where's Ethan? With my mother, I lied. She wanted time with him. After so long away, I figured, let them bond. Claire blinked. You could have told me. Could have, I said, smiling faintly. But I needed space. You understand. I watched her then closely. She was good. Really good. Not a single twitch betrayed the alarm I knew must have been firing behind those perfect green eyes. But she wasn't expecting this version of me, calm, compliant, playing the game. We had dinner. Talked about banal things. I complimented the food. Pretended to look at old photos of Ethan. I even leaned in when she touched my hand. She was assessing me. Recalibrating. The next morning, I woke early and drove to work. Instead, I parked 3 blocks from the port and waited. Warehouse 17 sat like a tumor at the edge of the docks. 2 security cameras. 1 freight entrance. No visible guards. I spotted the Mercedes first. Same one the daycare had logged months ago. Diplomatic plates. Claire stepped out wearing her usual tailored coat and designer sunglasses. Beside her, a man. Not Ivan. Too young. Athletic. American, probably ex-military, his posture gave it away. He carried himself like someone who expected no one to challenge him. They spoke briefly before entering the building. I snapped photos from the dash cam, timestamped and geotagged. Then I called Samir. They've made contact, I said. I need eyes inside. Already have them, he replied. You'll like this, Primex Logistics? Just hired a new janitor last week. A pause. Name's Will. You remember our hacker. Of course, he was already in. By that evening, I had audio. Will's mic caught snippets of a conversation between Claire and the man. The boy is compliant, she said. Has he asked about the other? The father. He's confused. But we have the next layer prepared. We can't risk a regression. We won't. He's bonded. The cues are solid. Ivan says once the speech module stabilizes, we go full protocol. Speech module. Full protocol. Regression. They were rewriting him. This wasn't espionage. This wasn't defection. This was psychological abduction. Claire wasn't delivering Ethan for relocation, she was flipping him, turning his trust, his identity, piece by piece. And now I knew what they feared most. Regression. Translation? Me. My presence still had power. My voice, my memories, my place in Ethan's emotional framework. They were fighting to erase me because I was the last obstacle. So I'd give them exactly what they didn't want. I was going to pull my son back, one memory, one truth, one moment at a time. But first, I had to finish what Samir started. We needed a wiretap on Claire herself. Not the burner phone. Not her work line. Her real phone. The one she kept face down. Password protected. The one she always took to the bathroom. The thing about being underestimated is, it lets you choose the moment you stop pretending. Claire still saw me as the soldier. Predictable, direct, ruled by brute force and blunt emotions. She never understood what my unit actually did. She thought deployments were about IEDs and border patrols. Not human infiltration. Not deep ops. I waited until Friday. Claire liked wine on Fridays. 2 glasses, sometimes 3, while watching her true crime documentaries like a bored housewife parody. I let her believe I'd finally relaxed. I let her talk about house renovations. I even nodded sympathetically when she mentioned how hard it's been parenting alone. By 10:30, she was upstairs, phone charging beside the bed, her breathing deep and even. I slipped from the guest room and moved like I had 100 times overseas, controlled, invisible. Samir's microreader was no bigger than a SIM card. I slid it into the port between her phone and the charger, just as he'd taught me. The phone blinked once, harmless. The microreader would siphon everything: messages, keystrokes, voice logs, app data. In 5 minutes, I had a digital mirror of her life. By dawn, Samir and Will had decrypted the logs. At 7:12 p.m., the night before, she'd texted a number labeled Console, Alt 3. Target contact deteriorating. Subject asking questions. Need timetable confirmed. At 9:51, extraction window confirmed. Sunday, 3:40 a.m. Tacoma Port. Dock 7. Ivan says burn protocol active if subject deviates. Burn protocol. They had a failsafe. If Ethan showed signs of remembering, questioning, or resisting, they'd erase everything. Mentally or physically. Samir called me immediately. We've got less than 36 hours. I know, I said. I'm already moving. What's your plan? Give them what they want. You're handing over the boy? No, I said, and let the silence sit for a second. I'm handing them a decoy. That afternoon, I picked Ethan up from Samir's facility. We'd been working gently with him. Sensory memory retrieval, trigger reversals, simple grounding exercises. He didn't know the full story, but the boy was sharp. Are we going home? He asked. Almost, I said. But not quite. I drove him to a safe house outside the city, one Samir had used during asset extractions. A fortified cabin, no GPS tags, and far enough from cell towers to stay off-grid. Will would stay with him, posing as a distant cousin. Ethan liked Will. He thought his British accent was cool. That helped. Then I changed. Clothes, posture, even gait. Shaved the beard Claire hadn't touched in months. Dressed like I used to, before deployment. And that night, I walked back into our house and kissed my wife like I meant it. Saturday was warm. Claire baked. I mowed the lawn. She suggested we all watch a movie that evening. I agreed. But after dinner, I told her I had to grab something from the base. Instead, I drove to Tacoma. Dock 7 was quiet. Floodlights off. Shadows swallowed everything but the faint outline of a shipping crate already unsealed. 2 men inside, civilian clothing, but their posture screamed military intelligence. One of them stepped forward and made a call. A few seconds later, Claire's voice came through a small radio unit I'd tuned into via Will's tap. Subject en route. ETA 90 minutes. The man nodded. He never saw me behind him. I waited until 3:20 a.m. The deadline. Claire's phone buzzed. No show. Radio silent. Do we initiate? She replied instantly. Initiate. Burn protocol. Phase complete. Back at the safe house, Ethan slept peacefully under warm covers, unaware that somewhere across the city, the people who thought they owned him had just activated a failsafe on an empty target. And me? I was already inside the consulate's secondary office, dressed as a delivery man, holding a package labeled with Ivan's name. The man at the desk looked up when I walked in. Early 50s, silver hair-buzzed military short, the kind of face you forget a second after seeing it. Except I hadn't. Not in a decade. Ivan Sokolov. He was supposed to be dead. The raid in Kharkiv was supposed to wipe him and half his network off the board. But there he was, alive and grinning behind a thin pair of reading glasses, as if he were just some harmless bureaucrat shuffling diplomatic documents. I dropped the package on his desk. Special delivery, I said. Ivan didn't even blink. The American ghost. We thought we lost you to the desert. And I thought you bled out in a warehouse with a collapsed lung. He smiled, slow and cold. We're both disappointments then. There were no guards in the room. No panic button in his reach. He didn't need them. Ivan had always been a psychological tactician. He relied on making you hesitate first. You always underestimated how deep I'd dig, I said, circling the room. But my son, that was never personal, Ivan said calmly. He has rare linguistic potential, plasticity, empathic recall. With the right influence, he could have been instrumental. He's 9, I said, teeth clenched. Ivan looked up. And you left him for 8 months. It was the wrong move. I stepped in close, real close, just enough for him to see it in my eyes. No more soldier, no more hesitation. I wasn't here for a firefight. I was here for closure. You activated the burn protocol, I said, thinking you'd eliminate the father variable. Ivan raised an eyebrow. Yet here you are. That's because what you burned was a shell, a ghost profile. You tried to kill an illusion. Smart, he said, sitting back. So where's the boy now? Safe. deprogrammed. And he remembers me now fully. Ivan tilted his head, almost impressed. That's unfortunate. It means this ends badly. For you. I smiled. No, Ivan. It ends badly for you. I reached into the delivery box and pulled out a black flash drive. Encrypted dump. Your voice. Claire's voice. All the messages. Audio, video, back channel server pings. Sent to 5 different agencies. FSB's going to love hearing your American pipeline. Ivan finally frowned. You made a mistake, I said, stepping toward the door. You didn't just try to own my son. You used my wife. You took my home and tried to erase me from it. Now the people you report to? They'll see you as a liability. A risk. You think that scares me? No, I said. But disappearing alone? Without a legacy, without a name, buried by your own side's silence. I opened the door and looked back once more. That terrifies you. Outside, Samir waited behind the wheel of a nondescript van. We drove in silence until the building was out of view. I handed him a phone. Send it. 1 click. 5 recipients. Within 10 minutes, the GRU would know Ivan had blown the operation, had exposed the entire Phase 2 programming sequence, and had used unauthorized American assets. His consulate cover would evaporate. He'd either vanish by sunrise or be found hanging in a Moscow bathroom. Justice, their style. But mine? Still coming. By the time we got back to the safe house, Ethan was awake, sitting at the kitchen table with a bowl of cereal, legs swinging beneath the chair like any other 9-year-old. But when he looked at me, really looked, something had changed. Hi, Dad. No hesitation. No flicker of confusion. No hidden subroutine hijacking his voice. Just my son. I crouched beside him, hand on his back. You okay? He nodded. Will says I'm not supposed to play any games with talking animals anymore. Good advice, I said, smiling. We'd won part of the battle. His mind was returning to itself. But it wasn't over. Because Claire was still in play. And Claire had no idea we knew. We spent the day preparing. Samir tracked her phone, watched her movements. She hadn't left the house since the failed extraction. But she was nervous, changing her passwords, calling unknown numbers at odd hours. Will flagged one call that bounced through a Belarus relay. 10 minutes of silence, followed by a single word. Confirmed. She was activating a fallback. We intercepted the text she sent an hour later. A new location. A new time. Final drop. Vault protocol. Doc 4. No Ethan. No handlers. No escort. Just Claire. She was going to disappear. Or so she thought. That night, I returned home again. No pretense. Just truth, cloaked in calm. She met me at the door, already in travel clothes. Hair tied tight. Makeup scrubbed. She looked younger somehow, more like the woman I met years ago. But nothing about her felt real anymore. I didn't hear you come in, she said. You weren't listening. Where's Ethan? With people I trust. She stiffened. It's not safe, It wasn't, I agreed. Not with you. Not with Ivan. Not when you let 3 strange men take our son from school while you played spy behind our backs. Claire's eyes didn't flicker. Not even at his name. You have no idea what this was about. I know enough. You know what it's like to serve, she said. You gave your country everything. But I gave my life to silence. To precision. You think being a mother made me soft? I think being a mother was the one thing you never really were. Silence. Then, it wasn't about Ethan. It was about control. Yours. You turned our son into a tool. She walked to the dining room and opened her bag. Passport. Cash. Burner phone. I didn't stop her. Because that's when Samir's voice crackled in my ear. Signal lock acquired. Teams in place. I stepped forward, slow. You're not going to Belarus, Claire. Her eyes narrowed. You think this ends with an arrest? No, I said. I think it ends with a confession. I reached into my coat and pulled out her original phone. The one with her voice locks. The burner. The Russian SIM cards. All cross-matched, time-stamped, and mapped to Ethan's trauma sessions. I dropped it on the table between us. FBI. DSS. CIA. All have the files now. I included a transcript where you called our son a compliant vessel. They like that one. You think they'll protect you? I don't need protection. I need closure. Her confidence fractured, just slightly. Then I played the last card. I told Ethan everything. She blinked. You told him. I told him who his mother became. Who she was. What she chose. No, she said, voice cracking for the first time. He's too young. Then you shouldn't have made him your weapon. Claire stood there for a long moment. Then she reached for the burner phone. The front door exploded inward. 2 plainclothes agents, 1 female, 1 male. Tactical, silent, efficient. Claire didn't fight. She didn't scream. She just looked at me as they took her hands behind her back. And for the first time in years, I saw her as she really was. Ordinary.